So, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, happy Diwali. So, you are able to listen? Uh,
Yes, Sebun.
yeah, fine. So, let's start with the session. So, today's session is like the AutoSAR enthusiast chit chat session. So, we can chit chat on everything. So, whatever you can come up with any of your general queries and then anything which is related to automotive and then AutoSAR and then about our sessions. So, if you have some recommendations, improvements, so you can discuss anything. So, there are no restrictions today, and there is also not any planned content from my side, as you know. So, we will just start with whatever our regular thing, and then we will go to our today's chit chat session. So today's agenda is a short welcome, and then definitely we'll have to always remind everyone who is joining the session about the do's and don'ts. So that we'll have to do it today again, and then we'll go with the ice-breaking session with our questions and answers. So coming to the participants, yes, we will have all the times in every meeting or every connect session we'll have beginners, professionals, and experts. But for the comfort and the benefit of the session, we'll always consider everyone, whoever is joining this connect session, as a beginner only, so that it will be easier and comfortable for everyone to ask and clarify the questions. It's coming to the do's and don'ts of the session. So we have these do's and don'ts that we will strictly follow throughout all of our connect sessions. Coming to the do's part, so please do consider all the participants in the session as beginners in AutoSAR. During the session, any basic questions you can ask us, and you can also ask the rest of the people who has joined the connect sessions. And we believe learning will be complete only when we are able to accept very basic questions and discuss on them. And the third important point is whenever you come to know, like you give out your understanding about a particular topic, and then there is some other person who has a better understanding of if the person comes up with his experience and better understanding, then please be proud to accept that our understanding is wrong and be open enough to learn from others' experiences. So this is the do's. And coming to the don'ts part, please do not judge any participant based on their questions and answers. So we don't want to judge any person based on their question and answers. And then please do not mind about what other participants will think. So please shoot out your questions as and when necessary. Okay. You can also raise your hand, and then you can even ask your question even during the session. Or you can also park your points or questions to the end of the session, and we can also discuss during the question and answer. And then next thing is the no exaggeration. So we'll try to stick to the basics and facts throughout this session. We will not exaggerate any topic or anything. So we'll try to stick to the simple and the basics of any topic. And the last and the most important, please do not mention any name of your organization or the OEM with whom you are working or the stacks you are working, because this will be confidential information for any company. So we are not going to reveal it. So neither from my side nor from your side, please do not reveal any of your organizational or professional related informations. We'll just try to stick to the topic based questions and topic based answers. So with this, let's start with the session. So I will leave the platform to you people. So if you already have some questions in my mind, so we can go one by one.
Hi, Ashish Sharma this side.
Yeah, hi.
I have one question regarding dataset selection bits. What is the use of those bits and why we need that?
So Ashish, so it is actually, so for example, if in the last session that we have taken for NVM, right? Okay. So we have talked about NVM, and then there are two documents which we are referring throughout the session, whatever we have discussed. So there are two AutoSAR documents I have mentioned. One thing is the NVM related SWS document, and the other thing is the NV data handler related thing. So have you got a chance to go through any of these two documents?
I have got a chance to go through one of the document, but I don't remember what was the name of the document. But I have surely I have got like something, and I have also tried to read from the tool itself. Like the definition is mentioned there. Like if you are clicking on the dataset selection bits, then the definition of the API is mentioned over there. I try to understand from there also, but it was not that much
Okay.
find to.
So I'll just share my screen. So just let me know once you are able to see the. You also need to share the web browser. So just let me know once you're able to see. You are able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, AutoSAR document is what we can see, NVRAM manager.
Correct. Okay. So now the question is about
I think data set selection bits. There is no space between data and set. Now after that we can type data set selection.
no, right? Okay. So this is for example, how, okay, this is what we want to understand. What is this NVM dataset selection bits, right? So this,
Yeah.
how do we identify the, or how do we classify this? Okay. So here NVM dataset selection bits, bit data index, allowing for up to 256 datasets per NVM block. So, and if you see, it is based on how many datasets you are going to allocate for the respective NVM block. So when you want to give this data set selection, right? So for example, the indexing. So based on how many number of data sets you are going to configure from. So the range is from, up to 256 data sets. Okay. So when you want to go with this, so based on this, you will have to allocate from your existing data set. So when you are actually going for the administrative block, so you will have to, if it is a 16-bit thing, and then based on the number of bits you are allocating for this NVM data selection, so that many number of bits will be removed and the rest of the numbers will be available. So there is an example here in this SWS document. So how do we calculate, or how do we example? Okay, administrative block, and then yeah, then environment block structure, block descriptor table is the next thing, and an example for this is for the data set, how it happens, and then you will have the set data index being called, and then so it means, and then followed by yeah. So this NVM dataset selection bits will be used for, giving the identifying your identifier value. So, and then based on the number of dataset selection bits, so if you can see the NVM block ID type, and so you, for calculating your NVM block ID, so what it will happen, so for example, if you want to have 255 data selection. Okay, so you will have 255 data sets, let us assume. So in that case, how many bits you will be needing? Okay, so if you go with this, just let us see. Defines the number of least significant bits which shall be used to address a certain data set of an environment block. So this is in the case of a data set. So you have, let's say, 10 data sets. Okay, in that case, so for each indexing of these NVM blocks, you will have to give the information about number of data selection bits that will be used for the identification purpose. Okay, the number of bits which are used for dataset or redundant block addressing. So in case of redundant block, you will have 1, so 0 and 1, and whereas in the case of data sets, you can go from 0 to 255, which means 0 to 8. So for representing 255, obviously you will need 8 bits, correct, right? So the data selection bits can range from 0 to 255. So that means it can, like, the data set can vary from 0 to 255. So the data set selection bits range will be varying from 0 to 8 to represent 255. Is it clear now, Ashish?
Not
really.
completely.
Okay, so I'll tell you, again, not an issue. So here we talked about like this, right? So dataset index I'm talking. Okay, so now the top selection bits, how do we choose how many number of data selection bits I have to configure, correct, right?
Yes.
For example, so that's what we are saying. So in case of data sets, so this data selection bits will be applicable in 2 cases. Either you are going for a redundant block. Okay. In case of redundant blocks, you will have 0 and you will have 1, correct? 2 blocks will be there. In case of data sets, you can have first thing and then, data set. Let us not index, call it as, just for the sake of our discussion. So here it will be, this will be data set 2. This will be data set 3. And this will be data set 4. Correct? Okay. So now how many you want to represent 4 data sets, correct, right? So now for NVM, for the indexing purpose, NVM will need to represent block 1 with dataset 1, dataset 2, dataset 3, and dataset 4. Correct, right? So how many binary digits you will need to give up until 4? So if you just take from example, okay, so you will need 2 power 0, 1, and then 2 power 1 is 2, so 1 plus 2, 3. So you will need minimum of 3 bits to indicate 4 data sets, correct?
I need only 2 bits to indicate 4 blocks.
2 power 0 plus 2 power 1, correct, right?
Yeah.
So how much?
Only 2 bits.
You're going from 0 to 3 or?
I mean, 0th data set, block 0th, we don't have any index. So will that matter? Yeah.
No, that's what. So it is all based on how you are looking into it. Okay, so let's now you understood 2 bits. Let us assume you need only 2 bits. Okay, so in that your data set selection bits size will be 2, correct?
Yes.
Of 8 bits, you need 2 bits for your use case. Let us assume for example, for the other use case, you have data set up to 10. Let us assume so. So in such case, how many bits you will need to represent 10 blocks?
So
1 plus 2 plus 4.
4 bits. Yeah, 4 bits I think needed.
You will need, correct, right? So in such case, so that the size of this data selection bits will be
4.
So what is the maximum you can go like this?
Up to like
up to 8. 0 to 8 is allowed. Okay, so for For a native block, you don't need any representation, so it will be 0. Whereas in the case of native block, redundant block, you will need 1. And whereas in the case of a data set, you will be making it from 1 to 8. 0 is not the case because we will not have the data set with 0, correct, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in this case, the size of this NVM data selection bits will vary from generally from 1 to 8.
Okay.
Got it, right? So it is all based on how
Yes, I got it.
data set blocks you are going to have in your use case.
Okay, got it.
Now it is clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah. So yeah. So two things always, for example, for any of the questions, whatever we discuss, there are always we directly go with this AutoSAR standard documents. So there are clear explanations. Only thing is we have to little bit spend some time on this.
Yes.
Yeah, it's clear representation. So about your range and then what is the multiplicity and then how do we calculate this? Yeah, Ashish, thank you for bringing this question. So we got a chance to discuss in detail. Yeah. Any further questions from other participants? It needs
My
also.
my
Yes.
side,
Yeah, Ramsubha.
yeah, my side, two related. One is intrusion detection system model, and second one is secure internal communication method. This is anybody having the experience, then we will discuss related to these questions. It is fine. If, for example,
No problem.
none of us we are not at work, then it is a insights to they can browse in Google or maybe they can browse in their Docupedias.
Yeah.
My question is mainly like any of your projects you are working for more than one controllers. Controller 1, controller 2, controller 3 you will assume. Your controller 1 and 2 is connected via private CAN.
Okay.
Controller 1 and 3 is also connected via private CAN. And controller 1 and 2 is connected via Ethernet switch.
Okay. So Ramsubha, before going further, okay, can you please explain to us like what do we mean by private CAN?
Okay. Yeah. Here private CAN in the sense you need to share some data from controller 1 to 2 itself of some communication channel. You have some internal to it is not a directly you can't transmit the data from bus direct line. So it is a communication between the controllers. That means you need to connect some devices. Okay, but your first controller already all pins are occupied and you are using a second controller IOs.
Okay.
That IO you can enable or disable via itself of some CAN signal.
Okay. So this particular CAN bus is only private to these two controllers. It is not for the vehicle level communication.
Yes.
Okay. So is it CAN that you are using, or because in case of two controllers we can actually go with SPA communication or the lower level protocols, right? Do we need a CAN communication between these two controllers? I don't know. It's a layman's question.
Yeah. Usually SPI whenever you need a more data, so at that time mostly you will go for a CAN or maybe a Ethernet switch. But you need like a bits-wise transfer, then you are also right, like we will use for a SPI communication.
Yeah, because my experience with all of the projects that I have worked, so generally we never used CAN level of communication for between two controllers inside the same ECU. Okay, so it was mostly SPI is what I have used, or sometimes it is for very less or smaller communication I2C sometimes. Okay, so and now the question is like you have now the CAN communication. Yeah. So Baru, we can go with the next. You can proceed with your question.
Maybe here we can able to take one more example for private CAN for ADAS systems, driverless systems.
Okay.
So we have a camera. we have a cameras and radars and lidars information.
Mm-hmm.
Each cameras and radars, we have a separate communication channels. Like assume that your MCU contains there are 5 channels. Okay, so one channel is talking about public CAN, which is talking about only your ECU. I can say some driver assistance ECU. Okay, this driver assistance which required camera information and radar information as well. So if your DASI, I mean your driver assistance ECU required camera and other ECU information, basically we are going to use the private CAN channels to because why we are using the private CAN channels, because it's a more data like objects and pixel and lean detection information. So it's like controller to ECU communication as well. Same in the within our microcontroller itself, we can able to use private CAN, where we can able to transmit the fuse data without using SPI, I2C, other lower ended communication protocols.
Yes, Siva. Yeah, you are right. Yeah, when usually whatever, even though SPI and I2C is also allowed, but when you are having a huge data, then you need to go for a CAN or maybe a Ethernet.
To support more faster communication. Okay, understood.
Okay, now question will be there, like we need to provide any security for that channel. Is the necessity is there, or we can use as it is a internal to the controllers?
Yes.
So
okay, so I think basically Ramsubaro, I think you also should be knowing better. The thing is like, so it is like, is there a possibility for someone intruder to disturb, or to disturb this particular communication between the private CAN communication or not? So I think that is where it all starts, correct, right? So first identification, whether it is possible to disturb the communication or create some issues there in the communication from an external intruder. So is that possible or not? So I think from your experiences, like you mentioned from I think ADAS topics, okay, and then from other projects, maybe people can give out their experiences. So do you see any possibility? It need not be a requirement at a high level. So let us think of the general possibilities.
In my perspective, maybe it is possible, like maybe Telfaf, okay, even though you can manipulate the inside the code flash and RAM and ROM and data flash is also possible. That means somebody tapped your internal content, internal pins of the controller, then it is possible to tap your line, communication line.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the my side of asset identification is while are having a internal communication controller access, they can replay the attack.
Okay, so which means what you're saying is if they're able to take the control of your ECU, who is having the access to this private CAN, okay, so which from there you are saying that it is possible to manipulate the data even on the data on that communication bus or the private CAN bus. That's what you mean to say.
That is the my side of threat analysis.
Yeah.
That is the my side. But as well, the communication experts from your side, after, for example, some intruder is replayed the message.
Okay.
So what type of security you already? That means somebody tapped your line and message is replayed. At that time, you are having a intelligence to implement that. You are discarding that changes.
Okay.
Then separate security features are not required.
Okay. So Shiva, you have any previous experience or some thought, or from your projects, or from your experience? So do we need security for this type of communication?
Yeah, security, basically as Subbarao mentioned, basically to tap the pins, maybe we have to provide the security usually.
Okay.
So, but we didn't support any security wise concept, but it's a high level requirements where IDS will come into the picture.
Okay, so my experience over securing the messages is only for the critical data. So we'll not go for the security of the messages for the normal data where it cannot cause any harm at a very big level. So there we will go with the normal other end-to-end communication related implementation like end-to-end protection, those things. But whereas where we are talking about taking the control and then it can actually manipulate the data and then can cause a harm to the driver. So always our security and safety standards are always to ensure the safety of the driver, that it will not cause any death. Okay. So that is what finally is the requirement for any vehicle. Either you go for security or you go for safety. It is to ensure the safety of the driver and the co-passengers in the vehicle. Okay. So in such cases, so if you are able to detect this kind of intrusion at a previous level, for example, Ramsubaro, so when you mentioned about that, when we are able to get the access of the pins, okay, that is at a ECU level itself, we will have some security related requirements, correct, right? It is not only about this particular CAN bus or private CAN bus, but at a overall ECU level, so this intrusion has to be detected and then the necessary actions need to be taken, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this intrusion, if you go from the general security point of where we go with the implementations with a CSM or a SECOSI module, where we will be having our own, encrypted data allocated before and after the data, so that you can understand whenever this, based on the keys, again we'll have the keys, based on that the algorithm is run, and then it will generate a unique identifier which will be understandable only by the receiver and the end user. And whenever there is a duplication or every time it will expect a fresh data, the freshness value, correct, right? Okay, this freshness value will be validated, and then whenever this freshness value is also missed, then we will not consider that as a secure data, and then we will identify that there is some problem in the communication. Somebody has tried to intrude or there is some other way. Because of this, we should not be using this data for operating our vehicle. So that will be the general detection system and how it goes, correct, Ramsubaro?
Yeah. Whatever you mentioned, it is in a public traffic. Yes, you are right. So public traffic and your message is a critical, then you already configured as that message as a SECOSI message.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So and now your use case is little bit next level, correct, right? So where the communication is between, now let us say it is the intrusion has happened and now the communication is between two controllers. So now the question is it needed to apply the same kind of mechanism even for the private CAN related communication, correct? Ramsubaro, is our understanding correct?
Yes, because you are using some of the IOs, so that IO behavior you can able to change it. So if you are configured as a SECOSI, you are protecting itself of your SECOSI message. That behavior of the IO also you are protecting.
Okay, because SECOSI and all is purely for the communication protocols. It is not for the general IOs, correct?
Message level only. It is not IO, but your based on your CAN signal, your IO behavior is present.
Okay.
So at that time, I'm assuming like it is a critical for me, that device.
Yeah, I think in general, yes, that can be critical. But I think from our audience, I think nobody has experience into that level of classification or identification, whether it is needed. So I think we will need to put more further studies on this, and then maybe we can come up if there are any case studies. So we can check it. We can start this. Yeah, please, Shiva.
Sorry. And
yeah,
one
sure,
more
please.
point is, if we are going to use SECOSI, it's a specified messages. Even there is a one open point is like in tab. I mean, between two microcontrollers or between two controllers, if you are going to use for the IO pins, if it is a private CAN data, okay. Anyway, we are going to use the SECOSI to protect our messages, but how many messages we can able to provide the SECOSI freshness values, I mean to say MAC and key values.
Yeah.
Again, it's a operation cycles. So how much data, how much for each message, how many messages you have. So for all messages you are going to use the SECOSI, or specific message you are going to use the SECOSI. Again, it's a matter of operation cycles. So
correct. Number of operation cycles. Yeah.
To use SECOSI, again, it's a again, it's not a correct approach. Even if I feel, is there any other cycle without? I mean, there are some high priority messages. We are going to use Sequoia. What about the normal messages? Even though the hacker can able to hack the normal messages also to manipulate the data. So this kind of scenario, we are not able to provide all the messages for Sequoia right now. So this is also one more open point.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what I understand is one way we are saying that ADAS level implementation. Another way we are compromising that still we have a lot of attack surfaces in communication level. Then this communication level, how to be strengthened that no intruder is replayed your messages. Your bus line will be more strengthened. What is the mechanism? Any mechanism is implemented for that level?
No, I don't. At least I am not aware of any such things. So, from my experience, it is just onto the level of the software provided security aspect. That is the SecOC. So that has been widely followed. So from my experience, from 1 or 2 projects, so this is the only method we have. But from the kind of hardware level protection and all, most of the controller level manufacturers, they also have different kinds of recommendation methods and then extra paid provisions, okay, for this kind of security related threat detections and then reactions. So those type of, I think there are some new methodologies coming even from the hardware point of view, but because all that we are discussing now is from the software execution point, but even from the hardware thing, so there are different kinds of controller level updates, driver level implementations, where you can avoid these kind of, for example, where that okay, some data is kind of protected, which needs to be protected, should not be manipulated by any third party things. So there, even from the controller level implementation, most of the controller suppliers, they are introducing a lot of things. I think maybe we have to little bit study on the Google results. So where we'll have to understand what are all the different other security mechanisms that are available other than implementing this SecOC and the encryption based methodologies. Because the reason, the other point which we also discussed is like whenever we are including the software implementations, obviously it is having an impact on the overall performance of the vehicle, where we are actually now we are talking about ADAS and the various advanced concepts, where timing is very critical. And in such case, because of the addition of these security implementations, if our communication is going to be impacted and the timing of the communication is being impacted, then obviously, yes, the existing methodologies may not be sufficient. I believe most of the advanced or the high-end OEMs, they would have been already working on this. Maybe thing is like we'll need to do some homework and try to understand how this is being addressed. So probably in our next sessions, we'll try to bring in this. If we have some other information, I will also try to look into it.
Yeah, this is a secure internal communication question. And the next one is mainline. When you have a mainline for a CAN channel, okay, your traffic is huge, and some of the messages you configured as a end-to-end protection, some of the messages normal CAN messages, some of the messages for SecOC messages.
Correct.
When some malicious package is observed at that time, you are maintaining a itself of minimum resources. You are logging the event. That means, for example, you feel like your end-to-end messages are corrupted or somebody replayed it into the bus. So at that time, evidence purpose itself of minimum memory and minimum resources of all your RAM, ROM and data flash. We need to maintain some logging event.
Yes.
That means some intruder details. It is not a solution of Argus or maybe script intrusion systems and all. I don't want. But it also minimum resources. Anytime tried any of our audience?
I don't think so, Ram Subbar. I think not. There are not many people, I think, who had worked to that level of, setting up the requirements for the security at a vehicle level or at a system level. So I think
Okay.
remains as an open question. So I understood your question, but it is little bit, I think we need some more experienced people to answer that question. So
Okay, no problem.
we can bring this to the common forum. So I'm also thinking maybe we should start with a kind of this type of questions in the forum level, so that people who has experience are not present in our sessions, they can give
Okay.
answers for these type of questions.
Yeah, sure.
Does
Sure.
it make
I
sense?
have-
Like we can put it as
Sure,
a kind
sir.
of, I think, okay.
Yes. Because why means because audience also get a benefited by our answers also. It is not biased by us.
Yeah,
And when they spend some time on the research,
yeah,
then they can also give their insights. Okay,
yeah.
that is my thought process.
Yeah, I think maybe we can start with this putting them into our forum section. Okay, so that people can continue with their answers. I will just see which will be better, whether to go with the put it in the forum or in the groups section. So let us see if what will be the best thing, so that we can put forward our questions, and we can also, for more details, we can put this particular session video as a reference, so that we can actually understand.
Yeah, sure. And because I don't want any existing ideas concept, because we need to use for a 2 KB RAM and 4 KB data flash. That and all I don't want. We need a log evidence itself of minimum resources. That is the requirement.
Yeah, understood. I think this is going to be a typical requirement for every project in the future. We
Yes.
want to have the minimal resource usage with the purpose being served. Okay, yeah. Thanks, Ramsubha. Anybody has any other topics that you want to discuss with?
From my side, there are 2 points.
Yes,
one is
please.
regarding the A2E for communication wise. Another one is Duo IP with Ethernet cables.
Yeah. I think we can
first I'll
discuss.
go with communication wise. So basically, we have a E2E where we need to check the ally count and check some.
Correct. CRC and
Okay,
LI. Yeah.
Yes. So for that, we have a profiles where autos are provided. So open source.
E2E
So
profiles.
basically,
Yeah.
These profiles and the E2E complete library, it is only useful for to check the ally count and check some values, or is something need to be provide some security or some other things?
There is not. See, E2E is completely related to safety. Okay, that's very clear. So we need not have any doubts there. Okay.
So safety in the sense what kind of safety it will provide?
Exactly. So, for example, you know about that E2E has different profiles. Okay, starting from profile 1, profile 2, okay, and my experience I've used and profile 5. Okay.
Yeah.
So inside that, so for example, if you can see, there are different documentations. Okay, so how do you select the first of all, how do you select your profile? Which profile you? So what are the factors that you will consider when you want to understand, okay, which is the profile I want to use for my end-to-end communication? Any idea, Shiva?
Yeah, actually we have based on the in our DBC based on the CRC position and ally count and data IDs, we are going to implement our end-to-end communication.
Yeah, so basically before maybe, okay, for example, if you are working from a tier 1 or a service supplier company, so you will be getting this, already these profiles are already confirmed or decided by the end OEM. Okay, because
Yes,
they will have to use the same kind of communication related protection throughout their vehicle. So in your vehicle, it might be having 200 to 300 ECUs, and all the ECUs, because they are communicating with each other, each ECU cannot use their own individual profiling. Okay, the profiling is based on for the communication bus. Okay, vehicle level. It is not an individual decision from an ECU. Okay, so even though you are tier 1 and supplying an ECU, the profiling requirements are generally done by the OEM. Generally done in discussion with the, for example, for an experienced companies, the OEM will also take sometimes recommendations and go in mutual discussion, and then will confirm on the profiles. But this profile decision is something which is done at a vehicle level. Okay? So if you take ETU profile, so based on your communication, so AutoSAR recommends which profile to choose. For example, if you see ETU library, definition of profiles is, you can see these are the different profiles. One profile 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, and 22. So based on your safety requirements and based on the communication protocol you are using your thing. So Shiva, are you working on Ethernet or on CAN?
Yeah, I'm completely working for CAN and as well as some Ethernet also supporting.
Okay, so CAN. So from your experience, what are the profiles used? So my experience,
I use it for profile 1 and profile 5. Profile 1 and profile 5.
Profile 5 is for, again for CAN you use profile 5?
Yeah, it's a CAN only.
Okay, so my experience, we have used profile 1 and 2 for CAN and profile 5 for Ethernet. Okay. This is what is my experience, but these are again the decisions which are done by the OEMs. Okay, so on based on, okay, so first of all, now let us assume, so now we are clear that okay, there are different profiles involved, and then this profile selection is done by the OEM considering their overall vehicle communication network and how they want the end-to-end communication protection to be there. Clear, right? So now,
one point here.
Yeah, please.
One point here. So yeah, as you said, all the issues will considered by same profile.
Correct.
So this kind of scenario, for each message having a data ID. So is this data IDs are similar for all the whoever is going to receive the frame? For example, if one issue is going to broadcast one message,
Yes.
who and all received the message,
Yes.
they are going to use the same data ID or something else.
They have to make use of the same profiling data ID. Okay, so always communication design will be always be done at a vehicle level. Okay, and then it is extracted to a ECU level.
Okay, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when you design the communication, you will have a system level, level communication extract, and that will be again subclassified or diluted to the level of an ECU. Whenever your OEM wants to give you a DBC, the DBC is actually they won't be designing the DBC at each ECU level.
Okay.
They will always design at a communication vehicle level communication. Okay, so now whatever, because the property of this message, okay, or the profiling of a particular message is not done for a particular ECU, it is done for the vehicle level. So if your ECU is transmitting a message, and if you are using, let's say, profile 5 for our just for the sake of discussion, so and then obviously the person whoever is receiving also need to make use of profile 5 for, because whatever you are doing is for sake of understanding, we are encrypting and the other guy has to decrypt. Okay, or for example, you are adding this alive and CRC data, we are calling that as an encryption. The same needs to be verified. So if the other person is actually making use of a different profile and a different calculation, again, for example, again it is which type of CRC and all those things. Okay, if it is done at a different level, then you have the same understanding of your data. He cannot validate your data.
Okay.
Got it, right? So, and both the sides, it should be the same mechanism to be used. That is the reason it is all done in the communication level. So, if you look at the tool chains, they don't allow you to add these, end-to-end communication design at your side. It will always come from the OEM side because they want to maintain the uniformity across all the suppliers.
Yes. Then this is the case. Normal scenario also, customer algorithm wise, to calculate
CRC calculation
wise correct. CRC customer also provide the kind of algorithm, right? Why?
Exactly. The CRC algorithm is always standardized. So if you remember in the very first session, so we have talked about the standardization of these libraries.
Yes.
Okay,
Correct,
so the libraries used across different suppliers will always be standardized. So it is recommended always. So or they should have a standard which is same as whatever is the AutoSAR recommended standard. Okay.
Okay.
So
Got it.
generally that is also uniformity is maintained. So that is the reason. So that is the beauty of the AutoSAR. So even if you are a different supplier or you have a completely different team sitting in a different location, at the end we are all following the AutoSAR standard. So we are all speaking the same language.
Okay.
Yeah. So now once you receive this, this profiling is received. So you have the CRC and Alive calculated. So and you also if you internal how it is done. So you have a transformer and you will also have for example, at a COM level, you can have a transformer. At T2 level, you can have a transformer.
Yes.
Okay, you can have also serializers where it will just generally pass on the data. It won't change anything. Okay, so COM serializer concepts and then transformer concepts. Okay, and then once this data is done, so then in the E2E transformation, it will actually look at this. So you also aware about the inverse transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all these methods will be applied on this thing, and then whenever there are issues observed, then it will actually give you different kinds of return values, standard return values by the CTV transformation. And then from those return values, you will have to understand whether it is a hard transformer error or soft transformer error. And whereas in the case of a soft transformer error, there are different types of errors, a kind of repetition, or kind of whenever the repetition will happen is whenever there is a delay on the other side. So the value of the alive counter will be repeated twice, or sometimes there can be jumps. So if in the previous cycle you have received one and then in the current cycle you have received as two, so ideally this is expected. But whereas in the current cycle, if you are repeating, you are getting the alive counter value as 3, then you consider that as jump, alive counter jump.
Yes. Correct.
So these are the different types of errors, and then you will also have a value where you can actually acceptance value, failure acceptance value, or error acceptance value. You can ignore. Okay, you will inform the transformer to ignore. Okay, even if there are 1 or 2 repetitions, don't bother. Okay. So these are the different types of configurations that you will do, but the profiling and then the profiling selection and all these things are done at a OEM level decisions. So these are not, means the suppliers are not given with the independence to choose their own profiling and methods.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next point is regarding.
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Shiva, continue, please. What is the next point?
Next point regarding this DoIP communication, okay, diagnostic over IP.
Okay.
So for initial, for example, if suppose external tester want to communicate, he want to try to request something. Okay, so basically where the diag request will go from so TCP IP to socket adapter and DoIP as a socket level, if I say. So for initial communication, we have a ARP to check the address whether where
it is coming from because the receiver, our ECU will be the tester address. Okay, that will be it as the remote address and the local address. Correct, right?
Local, yes, correct. Yeah.
Correct.
So basically, my question is, so for DoIP, basically we have a connection-oriented communication required for the diagnostic. So we are going to use the TCP. But if at very first time tester want to communicate, external tester want to communicate with our ECU. Okay. Basically, the request will go from the UDP. Okay, not from the DCP.
It won't go in the TCP. Yeah.
Because here just a small confusion. No? So broadcast is there in the UDP, but TCP won't support broadcast. That's why we are using the UDP. Okay. Then this is this case we are going to use the UDP itself, right? Why we need to use for the TCP for diag communication?
Okay. So basically communication like you talked. Okay. Initially, what happens in a system? Okay. Let us go in a little bit. So what happens in a system is like you generally have a switch. Okay. In most of the systems, you will have a switch. Ethernet switch, and this Ethernet switch will be connecting or controlling the communication or managing the communication between all the nodes which are connected to this switch. Correct, right? Okay.
Yes,
Each node is an ECU. Okay. So
yes,
your tester will be one of the ECUs. Okay, again, okay. And based on how you want to perform it, if you are doing it over a remote, then you will have a kind of telematic control unit, TCU. So where you will be giving the indication or a remote location over IP to your TCU, and then TCU will act as a the tester here. From the TCU, the request will go to the switch, and from the switch it will be again routed to the respective ECU. Okay. So this is how generally the diagnostics over Ethernet will be happening, DOIP. So the first thing is the broadcast. So first of all, for the tester to what tester will do is it will give a broadcast message to understand which are all the nodes available for diagnostics in that network. Okay, that's the first thing. It will try to send a broadcast message, and then all the nodes which are there in that, they will respond saying that, okay, I am available for diagnostics. This will happen in the UDP, like the broadcast. Okay. And then once the tester understands, okay, now it will have a list of ECUs which are available for the diagnostics. Okay, and now it wants to communicate, so it will actually communicate over TCP, so that, okay, with a destination address, okay, and a source address, correct? Okay,
yes,
in case of a TCP. So there, what will happen, the tester, the TCU or the tester ECU will be communicating only with our ECU. It need not disturb the other ECUs which are present in that network. So where the communication becomes direct. So where my tester is actually going to address or going to perform the diagnostics which are related to my ECU. So in that case, I have the source and destination address again, and then since it is routing, always if you have some other ECUs in between, again the communication will be like between your ECU and ECU, and from the middle ECU to the actual end tester address. Okay, so if you think from a vehicle level, so there will be a lot of gateway routings. Okay, because of the switch and also the other ECUs which are present. So when you have the direct diagnostics between your ECU and the tester, you will generally have the practice of using the TCP, and wherever it is a broadcast messages in the beginning and on in the later point of time, we will be using the UDP protocol. And I think
got it, but
between a TCP and a UDP, right?
Yeah.
What is the difference, main basic difference in a TCP and UDP?
It's a connection oriented and broadcasting for the UDP. Connectionless in the UDP, and it's a broadcast wise. And it will give the authentication also for UDP side.
Okay, and how?
The TCP.
Yep.
Yeah.
Continue, please.
Yeah, TCP wise, it's a connection oriented TCP, and we do not have any broadcast. It's a static information, and so there is no kind of notification and authentication once the destination port is connected or not.
Exactly. So for the sake of this, okay, now you have mentioned the very basic things of what is how TCP and UDP works. So basically, if you think from the general diagnostic purpose, what is your requirement for the diagnostics? Your question you will have.
Yeah, but my point is in the switch itself. Okay, I'm talking about very minimal where driver is going to work. Okay. So in the switch, for example, if you get the Ethernet packet, we have two fields. One is source address and destination address, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
including the port
my
addresses.
point is, including the port. Assume that if I take a physical addressing mode, not a functional. Okay. So I'm using the physical address where I know that destination MAC address also. Okay. So this kind of scenario, what is the necessity to go for UDP at very first time? It will go for through TCP itself, right? Let me correct if I'm wrong. Okay.
Yeah. There the basic understand. Whatever I know from my experiences, first of all, before starting communication, your tester doesn't know which are all the nodes available as a protocol. So this is one of the kind of a protocol. Protocol is nothing but the rules that has been set for establishing the communication. Correct, right? So as a protocol, so always the first step that will happen is to understand which are all the nodes available in that network to communicate. Okay. And that will not be direct communication with each EC. It won't go and check for each EC. So it will send a broadcast message over the UDP. Okay. And then it will understand which are all the ECUs present. So then it will understand, okay, now then the communication will be established between the respective ECU and your tester.
Okay. Maybe I understand that from your point. So once if you send a broadcast message, so how many how many nodes which is there in the network, it will take all the destination node addresses and it will check with the maybe switch MAC address which is available in
Exactly.
the
So
MAC
exactly. So
MAC
see,
table.
the very basic definition, you know, right? TCP is a connection oriented. Okay. And UDP is connectionless protocol. So it doesn't expect any connection to be established at a first level. Okay, so TCP always it will establish the connection between the sender and the receiver before the data is sent. So first of all, so before you cannot make use of TCP for this broadcasting purpose in the beginning. It is not because always TCP needs a connection. You need a sender and a receiver connection to be first established, and then only you can make use of any data transfer, which is not diagnostics in our case.
Maybe we have a static IP, maybe we can able to transfer.
Yeah, that's what, like, so that, see, first thing is to how you establish the connection. That matters.
Yeah.
Got it, right? So once you establish the connection, it is possible to do it over TCP. But without a connection, TCP is not at all possible. That is the basic thing which we have to understand.
Yeah. Maybe we have a static IP, then only maybe it's without using UDP it will work. I hope.
Yeah, generally that is not the general use case or the regular use case, right? Okay, so based on the complexity of the networks what we are having in our latest systems. Okay, so this is the standard protocol, because then initially, because we don't need a direct connection to be established, so we can make use of the UDP in the beginning. Okay, and then once the connection is established and you know like who is the sender and who is the receiver, and then the data communication between these two can be done over the TCP.
This kind of scenario, where we are going to provide the security. If I ask other point.
Okay, you are going to the network security now.
Yeah, I mean, see, we have an authentication by using some static IP. We can say it's our MAC address based on MAC and based on IP. We are directly we can directly access the node, particular node. If I am going to provide the UDP, it's a connectionless. So again, it's coming to the security point. So really, where we are going to provide the security, whether which layer, whether UDP we are going to provide the security, or MAC itself we are going to provide it, where any idea here?
Yes, Shiva, you need to provide the security for all the layers. That is the my side answer.
Okay.
Because you have a lot of attacks for Ethernet. ARP level you have a catch poisoning attack.
Okay.
And ARP level you have a man in middle attack. Okay. IP level you have a IP spoofing.
Okay.
MAC level you have a MAC spoofing. So TCP level you have your TCP connection may be hijacking, jamming. So my side you need to provide for each layer, you need to implement some security feature for Ethernet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So generally, Shiva, when we go with Ethernet, the possibility of threat attacks are more. So you will also need more security mechanisms in each layer.
Because nearly known attacks itself, 1 or 2 attacks are available for Ethernet. Already known attacks.
Okay.
Yeah. And any numbers for CAN, Ramsubbaru?
CAN also we listed down like a CAN also a lot of attacks, nearly 18 to 19 attacks.
Okay.
1 second, maybe more CAN experts looks like. Maybe I missed from my side anything, then maybe I will get a good answers from your side.
Okay, so from your side, you have like 18 attacks which are already identified. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and then for Ethernet, you mentioned around 100 and how many?
I hope Ethernet it's a 2, he said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So fine. So got it. Yeah, Shiva, any further questions?
Okay, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, any further questions from other participants? Rakesh.
Yeah, hi. I have one more question. I'm Ashish this side.
Yeah, Ashish.
Like data flash, sometimes I have also heard the word NVRAM. Actually, I'm quite new to AutoSAR, so
No
I'm
problem.
not.
Yeah, please. Please.
So NVRAM, what do you mean by NVRAM? Is it same like data flash?
No, see, you have the code flash and you have the data flash, correct, right? Okay.
Yes, yes,
Obviously going to be stored in the data flash only. Okay. It's not going
yes.
to flash because it's not a pre stored value. Where we are able to access the data during runtime, we are able to manipulate or change the data during the runtime. So that is what the NVRAM main functionality. So it is stored in data flash only. But yeah, again you have the code flash, like it is generally coming to our general overall binary flash and those things. Okay, data
Yes.
that we use during our runtime.
Sorry, I plan to connect my VPN and I lost the connection. I
No
rejoined.
problem. No problem, Ramsubha. Yeah, we are just discussing on the next point. Yeah, I think
Yes.
to answer your question, it is your data flash on. NVRAM will be accessing the data flash.
Okay, okay.
So basically, to be more specific, the NVRAM, the methodology is how we use for NVRAM for a flash EEPROM and an external EEPROM. Okay, ESPER-PROM is a little bit different based on, again, like in the last session, like we discussed regarding the number of write cycles. So the number of write cycles in FE are generally like it's a virtual addressing. Okay, there is no physical addressing in case of FE. So the number of address cycles or the write cycles for a FE are literally like infinity. Okay, whereas in case of EEPROM, it is actually writing a particular physical address location. So you are always writing to the same address location. So obviously you will have a limitation of how many number of write cycles that you can write to a particular memory address. Whereas in case of a flash FEE, you will not be writing the data into every time into the same location. FEE has internal methodology where every time you write, every cycle you write, it will be writing into a different address location based on the free RAM locations available for it. Okay, so it's a virtual addressing in the concept of FE. So, and again, you will, based on your use cases, how you use the data sets. There is something called as a walking concept, memory walking write concept. So where you can write it into different address location every time. When you are using the EEPROM, you can make use of this walking concept. Okay, where you need not write the data into every time. So you will be supporting on expanding the life of the particular NV block.
Okay.
Okay, that is the next level. So like I mentioned, this NV data handling, if you go through this document, you will get some high level understanding. But yeah, even I am thinking of one separate session, looking it from the application point of view. The last session what we have discussed is the general BSW configuration, what we will do for the NVM. So but I thought of having a separate session where we can discuss from the application point of view how you will choose whether you will need a native block or whether you will need a redundant block, or in which use case you will look for this redundant data set blocks. Okay, data sets in general, if you are using FEE in your thing, you will be using it mostly for storing an array of elements, and the best example is the calibration data. So that will be the general use case. Whereas if you are using it for an EEPROM, so if you are having an EEPROM in your project and you are going to make use of it, there is also other use case where we will have it used for the incremental writing into the different data sets. So instead of writing the data into every same block every time, we can create a data set, and every time you can update the NVM index, the dataset index value to next block, and then you can actually increase the size. You can actually increase the life cycle of that particular block. Okay, so these are different typical use cases which I thought we can discuss in a separate 1 hour session for uses from the application point of view. Yeah, Ashish, I think you're clear now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's clear. Thank you.
Yeah. So anything else? So Ram Subbarao, something before.
NVM related secure storage, any experience? Similarly, like how you are maintaining a secure message purpose freshness value, and your NVM block purpose also exactly when that block is written, because current system we don't know exactly when that block data is written in the memory.
Yeah.
We are not maintaining any value. So when we are reading via diagnosis to service read memory, we don't know exactly the data is stored in 1 year back or 2 years back.
Okay.
So
okay.
Similarly, a new concept like a secure storage itself a freshness value. So there you have any little bit experience, you can include that concept also in our next session.
Yeah. So the general security methods I am aware is like two levels of security. One thing is the software level and the other thing is at the hardware level. Okay. So
yes.
Always, like we discussed in the previous session, the NVM block accessing, the accessing of the memory is using an NVM block at a block level. So the respective block can be configured as a secured block, or means we cannot rewrite anything on that. We can enable the protection for the block from the software level, and also from the hardware level, you can have a range of address which can be configured as a protected value or a protection enabled memory region, where it is the data is allowed to write only once, and again from your diagnostics you can configure certain security level permissions to enter or to able to write or make use of that particular diagnostic service 2E to write into this respective memory location. And once it is written, it is protected, or the particular memory cannot be rewritten at any point of time. So this is the hardware level protection. So there are two types of levels of protection that I am aware, Ram Subbarao.
That is clear. After written, our assumption is it is a one-time written.
Correct.
But every form you need to check that block is written correctly or block is already modified.
Okay, so generally there is, you can check the block status whenever after every write you do. Okay, the next write operation can be done only when the previous write operation is completed. Okay, so if you perform a write operation consecutively and then the previous write is still okay, your current write can be ignored, will be ignored by the NVM if it has actually passes the time. And then in such case, you assume that the latest data is written, but it is not actually written. It is lost. That's what is your concern, right?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, again, this data sets comes into that picture, Ram Subbarao. So basically, when, for example, in the use case like I told, what we will be doing is one typical, so like in this use case, we talked about these data sets, right? So what we do is, so like we know, if NVMe is busy writing into this particular memory, and then again if you write, the data will not be written. Okay, but whereas if you increase the data set index and then try to write the next value into this data set too. Okay, in such case NVM can still write it because this block is not busy. Okay, so at least what you will have, for example, I will consider a use case of your odometer value. Okay, odometer value for every 1 kilometer you want to store it into your memory, that the vehicle has completed 1002 kilometers, and the next thing is the 1003 kilometers what you will store into the memory. Correct, right? Okay, so very high speed, let us assume, and then you are actually within what we call within few seconds you are actually changing from each 1 kilometer difference. Okay, so in such case, because of anything else, okay, and if NVM is still the previous operation of writing into this particular block is not completed, and now you again, if you are from your applications, because you have passed the next 1 kilometer, you will send one more new NVM write request. basic
Okay.
request is not completed. Okay, and again you will complete one more, and then there will be a queue. Right.
Okay.
Okay. So in such cases, what is the general my experience is that if you keep on writing to consecutive blocks instead of writing into the same block, okay, you can avoid these queue mechanisms. Okay, at the first level, and for example, even if there is a failure in writing this particular value, so started your vehicle and during your runtime you have traveled 100 kilometers. Let us assume.
Okay.
If you are trying to write it at 100th kilometer, so like if you are going to write the data only at the when you are going to stop your vehicle, okay, and if there is any problem, your vehicle what we call service of 100 kilometers will be lost. It won't be stored, correct, right? So whereas in this case, for every 1 kilometer I am going to write into consecutive blocks instead of writing into one block. So if I started with 100, okay, I will be writing 100 here, 101 here, 102 here, 103 here, again
Okay.
4 here, 105 here. So at any point of time, if
Okay.
you have my write has been failed, yes, at least I will have the previous value, at least, which is 1 kilometer less.
Okay.
Got it, right? Okay. And every time there is an NVM failure, write failure and all, you can have your own logging of the failure informations. From there you can also understand, okay, there is one write failure into this particular block. Okay, so accordingly you can also understand, okay, how many cycles would have been. Maybe let's say there from your complete write, if your from your logs you have something like 23 instances of NVM writes failed, let's say. So what you'll your current vehicle service data, whatever you are able to receive, then you will add this plus 23 there. That is the average understanding of your vehicle life. Right?
Okay.
So this is one of the mechanism that is used instead of writing into the same memory location, where there is also possibility that, okay, that the memory might be corrupted sometimes. This particular block can be invalidated. Correct, right? So then you will lose the complete data.
Yeah.
So to avoid such things, one of the recommended method is that you will be writing into consecutive address locations.
Yeah.
Got it? Whereas if you are using FE, let us assume, the FE will not write into the same location. It will be writing into different locations. So you don't need this concept when you are using FE.
Yeah.
When you are using EEPROM, this concept will be more helpful.
Yeah. Because avoiding this concept was only on-fly configuration came into the picture.
Correct.
That means you will always write the data into the RAM, and your assumption is data will be there in the NVM. But at the shutdown time of the ECU, you are writing the complete data.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't want to look, for example, for ODO type of critical data, right? I cannot completely rely on writing the data only at the end of my write.
Yes, but
Okay.
you are right. When your ECU autarky time is less than of 1 second or maybe 400 milliseconds, then I will agree. Maybe chances are high that every shutdown period you lose the data.
Exactly.
But you have enough energy reserve. Then instead of writing 100 cycles for every ignition, so you can, instead of 100 ignition, 100 cycles, you can write only one cycle at the shutdown period.
Yeah, it is all based on how much critical is your data. Okay, at any point of time, if I don't want to lose the data, so I will have my requirements written in such a way, logically, at least for every 100 kilometers I will log instead of writing for every 1 kilometer. Okay, so I can count also on the number, and then I can have a general mechanism of, like, if I haven't crossed 100 kilometers in that ride, okay, 10 kilometers in that ride, I will do it only at the end of my cycle instead of writing it every 1 kilometer. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so these are different type of requirements that you can choose for your system based on, you will be having the better knowledge about your the resource availability and the power consumption, these things and all those things. Correct, right? Okay. And how
Yes.
is data critical to you? So this is unique and specific to each OEM. Each OEM has come across these type of issues, and they will already have certain kinds of recommendations and requirements which are must to be taken care by any supplier, whoever is the supplier that they are going to serve, the OEM. So they will have to follow these implementations as a kind of their safety mechanism or security mechanism. Yeah, I think we understood a little bit about how different use cases can, based on different use cases, we can choose our memory layout. Yeah.
Yes.
Any further questions?
One question.
Yes.
For secure transmission, why we go for E2E only? Like we have a SecOC also, right?
E2E is not secure communication. It is only for safety. Okay, so there is no encryption of the data. There is nothing. Okay, in case of an end-to-end communication protection, it is only using your Alive and the CRC. Okay, so the data validation is done using the CRC, and the freshness is done using the Alive counter. Okay, so that you always make use. So it is done in the context of safety, the E2E. Whereas the SecOC is done in the context of securing the communication from external attacks. So here internally what we are looking at for end-to-end is only based on the aliveness or the availability of the other ECU first level, and because we want to understand whether the data that is coming is the live data that I'm getting from the other ECU. So there is no security involved when we are going for the E2E. It is only about the validation of the data. Only for the safety purpose, E2E, E2E for safety purpose only.
And this profiling, this will be done selected.
No. First, you can understand that safety and security. Security is always external from third person. Safety is internal to your car. For example, inside your car, two ECUs are talking each other, maybe chassis control and body control. So in such a messages, you will go for a E2E profile. When you are transmitting the other chances, that means your spoofing of your message is possible by the hacker. Then that message is spoofed by the hacker. Then you are losing a UCON or maybe losing a it will create a crash or something. Then you will always configure for a SecOC.
Okay.
So, but SecOC purpose, you need the keys. That keys means you need again some mechanism to store the keys.
Yeah,
So,
key algorithms is there, so that
that key maybe you can store inside your code flash or maybe inside your hardware security module based on the criticality.
It's a module. Yes.
That is expensive. So that's only your project is need SecOC or not based on the criticality of the messages your ECU is handling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
And
So
these profiles will be selected by OEM, right? Based
yes,
on vehicle communication only, right?
based on the vehicle communication, it is not specific to your ECU. It is specific to the vehicle level communication design.
Okay, like profile 1 and 2 and 5 something we have, right? So like that, like in profile 1 we have any limitations so that we go for profile 5, like only for CAN frame transmission or CAN FD transmission based on that, or like how?
No, there are, for example, that is actually very big thing that generally this discussion will be happening. If you have an experience working with the OEMs directly, you will come to know this. So the finalizing or identifying the profiles is one of the critical factor at a architecture level. So the architecture team will be discussing, for example, if you go to any profile level, so each profile, where is, I believe it should be there in this document. So when you go for the E2U profiles, so each profile has various features that are provided, and then accordingly you have to choose. Also based on your, the size of, for example, if you are using, for example, if you see specification for E2U profile 1, we'll just take an example of one profile. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is based on, for example, these are the features that are supported by each profile. So if you take profile 1, if you decide profile 1, what you will get? You will get a counter of 4 bits. Okay, explicitly done. Then you will get the timeout monitoring, and you will have a data ID and you will have a CRC. This much. Okay. So this is what you will get with profile 1. So let us go for profile 5 just to see the example.
Yeah.
English section 5. If you go to profile 5, so profile 5, what it contains? So it will have a counter, CRC and data ID. Mechanisms can detect the following faults or effects of faults. So repetition, loss of information, delay of information, and masquerading. So this is another topic which is little bit complex again, which you need to go with some little bit of homework, and then you will understand this concept. What is this needed for? And then if whenever there is incorrect addressing and then incorrect sequence of information, corruption of information, asymmetric, and then information from sender receiver only for subset. So these are other different other factors that you will get with profile 5. Okay, so
Because that's only profile 5. Profile 5 mainly is used for Ethernet, most of the tier 1s, guys. Maybe that is a project destination, because here address also there. Always Ethernet is the source and destination address handling.
Exactly. So it is all depends. So again, that's what I told. My experience is using profile 5 for Ethernet. But I think other means participants they mentioned, they also have seen profile 5 for CAN as well. Yeah, which is possible, because if you are okay to allocate, here you can see the counter will occupy 1 byte. Okay. And then CRC, when you go for profile 5, it will go for again 2 bytes of data. So 3 bytes of your 8 bytes of data will be gone for counter and the CRC. Okay. And then obviously again, you will have the data ID support for 16 bits. So this is what we'll have to understand based on your requirement. So how much is your data ID length? How much is your CRC length you can support, and how much is the counter? So if you can see here, so if you see data ID takes 2 bytes and then 2 bytes for this one and all those things. So then you will actually be losing a lot of bytes of your every data frame for this E2E data itself. Okay, and you will be left out with 4 or 5 bytes of data that can be used for the normal data communication, which may effectively increase your number of CAN messages in your system. Okay, so this is all begin. That is what it is part of the architecture design on how you effectively choose your profiles that you want to use in your project. So each profile has different features that will be supported, and if you need those features, yes, you will go for that, and strictly on need basis. It is because here everything will impact, because when you increase the number of messages in your system, obviously you will have a lot of bus load, and internally you will have a lot of processing time that will be extra taken for each message processing across all the layers. Got it, right? So based on those requirements, the OEM will decide, okay, based on how much load, how many communication messages they have in your system, whether your controller will be able to handle it effectively or not. So always there are a lot of advanced features that comes with AutoSAR, but AutoSAR says basically one thing: you please choose the options only extremely or explicitly on need basis. Since it is available, it is not that we have to make use of it. If you feel that is causing an extra load, please try to avoid the usage of that particular module. Only strictly on need basis. And if you have your own efficient methods, much efficient methods compared to the AutoSAR provided things, then you can also obviously go with your CDD implementations.
So it's like basically on multiple choice, like this feature
Yes.
is there. If you want, you can just like
Exactly. So once you are using that module, AutoSAR has some guidelines on how to use it, because to ensure that it is synchronizing with other modules, AutoSAR has some guidelines and some standards.
okay.
Okay, so no module is like, the must and should, because for example, if you have a very old controller with less resources, and if you bring in the latest, for example, if you can just think of an example of your mobile phone, even if your mobile manufacturer is releasing the latest version of the software, and if your hardware, whatever the phone that you carry in your hand is the older version, what will happen if you put that software into your phone will become slow. Correct?
Yes, yes.
So obviously you will feel again throwing the phone, because even though you are getting a latest software, but your main basic usage of using a phone will be impacted. So it is our decision. Do we need this latest version? Sometimes the supplier will say, okay, this latest version of OS cannot be flashed on this kind of models, because the controller capabilities in that particular model is lesser than what this OS needs. Correct, right? So even if you are having because that is where again the controller selection for your ECU will be very critical. So always when they are doing the controller selection, they will consider all these things in their mind. So how much is the load needed and all those things. It has to support, and what are the memory it has to support, and all those things will be main critical things. The same is the case with considering profile selection or identifying messages which needs to be secure communication. Those things and are all based on your. It's not just one person's decision. It should be thought at a system level. For example, if you are one ECU supplier, if you decide this particular message will be encrypted, obviously the other person also need to have it, right? The person on the receiving end.
Yes, yes.
Otherwise, they will not understand your encrypted data. So it is like anything that you are taking a decision, we will have to think from the vehicle level impact analysis.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good. So I think we are able to discuss a lot of things. So we started with NVM data selection bits. And then we went with security mechanisms or security requirements identifications. And then we went with the ETE profile selections. We went with general uses of NVM blocks. Yeah, we also discussed about the resource impact. On identifying AUTOSAR features. Okay, so it's a good discussion. So before closing, we can close the session in the next 10 minutes. Before closing, I just want to take your help in understanding your feedback. Okay, so how do you feel about our session? So do you feel these sessions are helpful, and what are the time we are investing every weekend? Is it really worth? You're getting any benefit out of this?
My point of view, I'm getting a benefit.
Super. Okay.
So the things which I till now the topics which I am unaware of that, so I am getting it.
Cool. So I'm about
Thankful to you.
Yeah, my main intention is some of the features of latest technology features. We need to give insights at least. I don't want to give complete details based on our do's and don'ts.
yeah.
But at least I'm giving us some clues like already some latest technology inputs are coming. Like most of the people, maybe their project not using an intrusion detection system.
Yes.
But at least I'm giving us some word like intrusion detection system, then they can browse means they can get lot of data.
Yes.
So then I'm giving a some more method like a threat and risk analysis. That means TARA analysis. So where they're really interested about the latest technology, they can browse it. That is the main my intention. And parallelly, whatever you are discussing regarding related to AUTOSAR it is a well benefited by the all the community people.
Yes.
That is the my side feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ram Subbarao. How about Shiva? You have something to say?
Yeah, it's really helpful, and even I'm expecting new technologies where Ethernet, some IPs, and even NVM and OS related concepts. Yeah.
Yes, we will
What
have
and
to.
all we discussed right now, it's who are not aware of AUTOSAR, it's very useful. It's like
Yes.
a basic way of explanation.
Yes.
So even I referred my friends also, they are very interested to that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they get the invitation.
Yeah, thank
for
you,
this
Shiva.
webinar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the main thing is yes, we can keep on discussing every week a project, okay, every week a concept, okay. And then we, of course, nobody is an expert here. We are all just bringing in our experiences, okay, wherein we can learn from others' experiences. It is all important to understand that we stay connected with other people who are working for different OEMs and different projects, so that we understand what are the practical problems they are facing. So when we start with any new topic ownership, so we will have some idea about, okay, what are the experiences from others guys. So inside your organization you might not have a person who has already worked on this topic. It is most of the cases that this is the real time scenario. You will not find some people who has already worked on this topic to guide you, or to give you with some idea on, okay, what are the different issues that may come across, or what are the prerequisites before you start with this topic. So in such cases we need information from people beyond our organization and people who has got opportunity to work on the topic. So this is what we thought a right platform, where we don't want to put any restrictions, and there is nothing called as experienced based dictations or experienced based discussions. So it is all about like the only attitude should be that we want to learn, and then we want to get benefited. Obviously we'll also give the benefit back. So we have started with that assumption and then intention. Yes, we are going good, and we are also getting a lot of good feedback. And the main thing is we don't want to involve any cost or money in this kind of sessions, because that is not what is our intention. So we are going with that intention that everything, we are just spending our free time. We are not doing any extra benefit to anybody. Spending our free time, only thing is like myself, I am just putting onto the organizing these sessions. And my expectation is that more of the participants, if they can come forward and then present some of the topics without any hesitation. So we are also not asking about any names and all here. So nothing there in the hesitating in that part. So if people come forward and then they contribute, yeah, obviously the benefit will be much more, and obviously we will achieve whatever we have started this topic with. So I feel thankful. So everybody, whoever is continuously supporting, even it is a Diwali day, you have come and spent your time with us today. Thank you. So tomorrow, because it is a festive weekend, I am not planning any topic session this week. So for next week, I will come up with the next topic. Yeah.
So, sorry, actually, yeah,
Yes, Shiva.
basically, so the interaction, I mean, so basically, I'm supposed to give some ComStack and NIAC stack trainings to the people in industrial level also. So
Perfect.
even ComStack also done maybe from your side. I hope it's
No,
not
at a high
easy.
level. See, always any topic, whatever I'm discussing. So it is not possible. I can, for example, if you take only NVM as an example, I can think of around 4 to 5 sessions where we can go on discussing in deeper level on each parameter, whatever. For example, today we started with this NVM data selection bits, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So this, as you go on inside, so for example, even if I take anything, for example, can or com or anything, for each topic, if you take one parameter, we can have one discussion of 1 hour. Okay, so please do not assume that the topic is completed. So obviously, if you have a presentation to make, or if you have some content to share, please feel free. So like you mentioned, if you have some topics in mind, Shiva, just please ping me in our Facebook groups, or directly also in the Auto eConnect website. Okay, there are different ways that you can connect to us. Okay,
Yeah.
so just ping me over there, and accordingly we can schedule our sessions.
Sure.
Okay, so I don't want to bring in people, or I also don't want to get always the sessions from my side. It is also very tough for me, because throughout the week we are definitely very busy with our project related engagements and project related responsibilities, and generally that is the reason I set up the sessions on Sunday, because I get some time on Saturday to prepare myself. Definitely I will not get any time during the weekdays, because we will be completely busy with our regular project activities. So all that I am dedicating is on a Saturday and a Sunday for these sessions. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Shiva.
Yeah.
Please let me know about the topics you want to then
Yeah.
accordingly we can organize sessions.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Shiva.
Hello guys, this is Rakesh.
Yeah, Rakesh.
Yeah, your intention is good, and I had an experience with non-AutoSAR. Fortunately, now I get into the AutoSAR project, so I am happy to watching your videos. And uh, I have one question, like for the AutoSAR developer. So what are the key skill sets those persons should have as a developer for working any module?
And
My side is a basic C, means then you are able to work for AutoSAR of any component, Diacom or maybe NVM. Only C language, and
Okay.
you have a more interest to read the documents.
Okay.
Then these are the two skills I will recommend always.
yeah.
First, you don't want to fear about that. Any document you will open, it will be a thousand of pages. You don't want to afraid anything. Just you try to understand your organization, what tool is using, and what is your requirement. Based on your requirement, out of how many parameters you need to ignore, and how many parameters you need to consider.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
these all are the four shortcuts from my side.
Yeah. Adding to Ram Subbarao, Rakesh, is that the thing is like my understanding is if you have some embedded systems knowledge, right, in the prior hand, like if
Yes, I have.
on AutoSAR, so obviously you are not too far away from AutoSAR. AutoSAR is just more organized way of doing the things. That's it. Okay. It's only set of rules. AutoSAR sets any protocol to that extent is set of rules, which you are going to perform your activity in much more organized manner. Okay. So if you're coming from a non-AutoSAR background, the only thing is you will have a OSEC based OS there. Okay. In non-AutoSAR.
Okay.
And you have an AutoSAR OS here, which is like more featured and then having more checks, more validation checks, more quality improvements and all those things. So you are not definitely far away from any of your classic implementations that you have done in the non-AutoSAR. The basics of C language, if you are good in C language and you are able to understand the AutoSAR stack related code, and basic thing is like I mentioned in the very first session, when you're working for a module, if you know the above layer module and the below layer module little bit, okay, and then my recommended way is always go with a first of all at a design level understanding. Directly don't jump into the code or implementation. If you have a proper design about what is your module going to do, what are all the main things of your module, and then how it is going to interact with the modules, other modules. If this part is, if you are able to bring it into a good picture or a good design, okay. For me, it is like you are 80% done. And most of my experience with my, during when I have started with my career, my seniors or my reviewers or leads, okay, they used to spend a lot of time. For example, if I am spending 10 days in my module development, 7 days to 8 days to go only on concluding the design.
Okay.
For the design, AutoSAR has everything. Okay, like you need not research on how you what we call create the interfaces and connect them. These are all standardized. Don't bother about that.
Yes.
It's all about how much the clarity that you have on your module and how your module is going to interact with the external modules or the communication bus or anything. Okay, so once you have this clarity, so that is where I used to have a lot of reviews with my leads. Okay, like they used to come up with every time I go with my design, so they will review and they will ask me, okay, did you consider this point? And then again, okay, I understand. Okay, I forgot this point. Okay, so then again, so when based on I update my design again, I go, then when they say, okay, since you have included this point now, so what is the impact of this on your overall design? So will it of your existing design? So you have added functionality. So now what is the timing impact? So do you need more time to process? For example, if it is an application module, I have decided that I will need 10 milliseconds to perform this complete module. Let us assume.
Okay.
So now have added new functionality. So do I need more time? So do I need to increase from this from 10 milliseconds to 20 milliseconds? Or I have to wait for somebody else to answer me. In such case, what will be the impact on the overall system? So how many wait events I have inside my system? how many times I have to wait.
Okay.
So all these are all, you first of all, you get the complete knowledge on your module, and then what is the impact that you are going to create to the other modules, including the system. So this is how
Correct.
we used to spend more time on the design first. Once you have the design clarity, hardly, since you know C language and since AutoSAR is standardized, hardly you might need some 4 to 5 hours to code your module.
Okay.
Got it, right? Okay, and then test
Yes.
the testing. So main thing for me is the R&D is the main thing, the requirements and the design part. So you have to have your requirements clear, and then somebody, even if there is time pressures and all, always for a technical guy, you should really ensure that you have all the requirements in place, because otherwise, if you don't do that, even though you're saving some time in the beginning, obviously when it goes to the system level testing or it definitely cause problems, and that might consume months of time. So never allow somebody to bombard you with time related constraints. So just ensure that you are giving enough time for your requirements and design. Then coding part is how good you are in the coding part. Okay, you can write an efficient code, or you can also simply go with an if else. So if you go to look at any of our automotive codes, mostly it will be if else only. You receive if the received input value is this much, you do this, otherwise you do this. That's what.
Otherwise, yes.
Only some, if you're very good at writing, you can write an optimized code using the switch statements or other things. Okay, so that's about how good you are in coding. But for me, the most important is the requirements and the design part. And for the requirement, you will get it only when you are experiencing the systems. So to design, you'll obviously need some system knowledge that comes with your experience, or from these kinds of sessions where you learn from others' experiences, or from reading from their blogs and all those things.
Okay.
Yeah, Rakesh.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is not everything what we have discussed. So we can actually, the thing is, it's a continuous learning. That's what I believe. So we cannot completely pack something and then give you, okay, this is what is the module is all about. Okay, so it is continuous evaluation and continuous learning. So, and like Ram Subbarao mentioned, the other point is you should be habituated to reading long documents.
Yes.
Okay, AutoSAR documents contains everything. There is nothing beyond the document. That's what I always say. Whatever content that I bring into these sessions, everything is taken from these AutoSAR documents only. It has everything. Only thing is based on your experience, the way you understand that document. The first time when you're reading the document, and 10th time when you are reading the document, your understanding will be obviously different.
You can ask more questions, Rakesh. Okay, you can prepare for a next week session purpose. You can prepare for your own questions. When you are asking a question, then that means you already read the documents, and some points it is not clear for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that way you can easily learn it. Within 3 months or 4 months, easily you can learn it from COM and DIAG and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. So with this, I will close the session. Okay. So we are already 1.5 hours or 2 hours. Okay, with our sessions. So let's not spoil the festive mode. So spend some time with your families on the festival day. So with this, I will close the session. Thank you so much. So we'll meet in our next session.
Happy Diwali, Sri.
Happy Diwali. Thank you. Same to you.
Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali to all. Bye.